It is now just past 10 o'clock here in Pacific time and just past 12 a.m. in Central time, which means that the secondary transfer window of MLS has officially slammed shut. And like what I did in the primary transfer window, where I decided to do kind of a review of the timeline that has happened during deadline day, I'm going to do the same thing in this video. And just like last time, I'm not going to use the board to do this because since, as many people expect, there was some crazy deal that went down on deadline day, it was the same case here, and that there's just way too many kind of news that I have saw doing deadline day that I just could not able to fit it all on the board. That's why I am just gonna kind of read it out, and then instead of reading out on a book, I'm gonna actually read it out from my phone because that makes it a little much more easier, and that I don't really need to kind of write things down. But we start off at 8:52 a.m. Eastern time, where I'm actually reading this straight from the MLS Soccer website, but it says not much to catch up on since last night, though this present a good time to round up a few storylines to watch for today. Christian Pavon to the Galaxy, Ola Kamara to DC United, Emmanuel Boateng also to DC, Bojan to Montreal Impact, and Brian Rodriguez to LAFC. And about 90 minutes after that message was sent, it was official that we had our first transfer of the day on deadline day, and that is Gaston Soros has left the Columbus Crew for Liga MX Toluca for an undisclosed transfer fee. And, you know, obviously Columbus has been very busy throughout this summer transfer window, and that there was a lot of rumor the fact that Gaston Soros was probably going to be leaving Columbus and joining an MLS club, although I definitely did not expect the fact that he decided to go to Liga MX, and that, you know, this news of course is official. They didn't say exactly how much is the transfer fee, they just said that it's for an undisclosed transfer fee. And then at 10:20 or 11:22 a.m. Eastern time, talk about DC having seen some new faces, with Felipe obviously being confirmed, and that's what I talked about yesterday in the news of the day. But there was still one very heavily report acquisition that they were trying to get. They were trying to get Boateng and also trying to get Ola Kamara done before the end of the day. And then at 12:03 p.m. Eastern time, this is when Nashville SC had made another splash in acquiring defensive midfielder Annabelle Godoy from the San Jose Earthquakes in exchange for $650,000 general allocation money. He will remain with the Quakes this season as the trade doesn't take effect until January 1st of 2020, and that this is something that I announced earlier today, and in fact it's actually the first video of what would be 4 videos that I have done today. So yeah, not really much of a surprise when I already kind of made a video of that. But then at around 12:34 p.m. Eastern time, this is when I talked about earlier of all the speculation of whether or not if Bojan, Pavon, Ola Kamara is going to be coming to MLS. Well, one of those players that was heavily being in speculation heading to the transfer deadline day was completed at 12:34 p.m. Eastern time. This is when Bojan has officially joined with the Montreal Impact after he left Stoke City, and that he actually joined Montreal as a free agent. And you know, this is definitely a big signings for Montreal, and that I really thought that, you know, even if Bojan is nothing like what he used to be, and that he used to be one of the most talented kind of wonder kid in the world before it kind of all fell apart. Even if that is the case, I still think this is definitely a good signing for a guy that, you know, has had a lot of career playing some of the biggest club in the world, and it can really help this Montreal attack that is desperate to need some more firepower besides what they got from Lassi Lappinen and also Ignacio Piatti. Then at 1:01 p.m. Eastern time, this is where the other heavy acquisition was announced to be an official kind of acquisition by one of the club, and that of course is that DC has officially acquired LA Galaxy midfielder Emmanuel Boateng in exchange for $250,000 target allocation money. Certainly it's a decent signing for DC that definitely needs some depth in terms of the wing area. Boateng, was okay when he was with the Galaxy. He wasn't spectacular, but he's definitely a good player that I think could be a good option for a team in terms of the depth chart. And DC, of course, was able to complete this deal, so well done to him. And also, it turns out that 10 minutes later, it looks like the Galaxy got back just 136,000 in TAM for the 200K it gave Orlando City general allocation money. So apparently there was some confusion in terms of the GAM and TAM kind of money. Let's see what else we have. Oh, and then at 2:17 p.m. Eastern Time, after Montreal decided to sign Bojan, they were also looking to trying to add more attacking piece, and that they were actually going to go to Barcelona B to announce that the club had sent winger Balo Tabala on loan for the Impact. Now, at that point, this was still a bit of a speculation, but, it still haven't really confirmed yet, and that we'll see later on if this news, of course, would be confirmed. Now, at 2:32 p.m. Eastern Time, there was a report that Diego Rossi is going to go to Fiorentina, and that Fiorentina was actually going to pay $17 million to try to get Diego Rossi, and this was according to Univision. And, this was an interesting move that LAFC kind of had to think about, because on one hand, $17 million is a lot of money, and that it's very hard to say no to that amount of money to one of the guys that you develop throughout your time in MLS. But having said that, Diego Rossi is a very important player on that roster that is not named Carlos Vela, and I just feel like if LAFC is going to make a run in MLS, I don't think this was kind of the right time for them to potentially sell Diego Rossi, even though they had a big chunk of offer. I think maybe, obviously with them heavily linked with Brian Rodriguez for a long time, I just think that maybe until the end of the season, if Brian Rodriguez is going to be an impact player and being a guy that could potentially be the replacement of Diego Rossi, I think LAFC won't probably decide to sell Diego Rossi this soon, and that if they do win MLS Cup, then maybe they can think about selling him and earn that profit out of that. But still, $17 million, that is a lot of money. Like, that's almost right near the range of Miguel Almiron kind of transfer fee that pretty much now breaks the MLS record as the biggest transfer in MLS history. And then at 2:59 p.m. Eastern, there was a report saying that Christian Pavon is actually in training with the Galaxy. And actually, this is not even a report. This is just a picture that showed that he's actually practicing. As you can see right here. Not really. I don't know if you can't see it clearly, but yep, he was at Dignity Sports Park, and he was already there getting ready to be signed by the Galaxy. But at that point, there was still just speculation of whether or not if this is actually true, or is this just kind of like a Photoshop or whatever. And then at 3:03 p.m. Eastern, it was made official that Ola Kamara is going back to MLS, and the rumor of the fact that he's coming back to MLS and going to DC United is officially true, as he, of course, have been acquired by DC United from Chinese side Shenzhen FC for a $2.5 million fee. They also had to pay $200,000 general allocation money to the Colorado Rapids for that number one allocation ranking. But yeah, this is a massive signing for DC, and this is probably the most important signings that DC had to make during this transfer window, because it's clear that they do not have a reliable goal scorer on this team, and that they really need a striker that can put in the goal and can score at least 10 or 15 goals every single season. And I think Ola Kamara is definitely that kind of guy. And that also makes me wonder, with Ola Kamara now being the guy at DC United, does that mean potentially Lucho Costa will be leaving at the end of the season? Because I believe Ola Kamara actually plays at the same spot as Lucho Costa is playing, and unless you want to play Lucho Costa out of position, then yeah, he looked like he could be on his way out of DC by the end of the season. Then at 4:26 p.m. Eastern time, there was a rumor that Josh Sim was going to be going on loan with the Red Bulls from Southampton. The 22-year-old English winger has made 20 Premier League appearances for Southampton, though just 4 starred, and he had 2 assists and 17 appearances, 5 starts on loan with Reading in the Championship last year. Now, at 4:51 p.m. Eastern, there was a rumor about current LAFC striker and former Minnesota United forward Christian Ramirez could be on the move for the second MLS transfer window, and that there is a rumor that he could be actually be heading to the Houston Dynamo. And I knew that Ramirez probably was going to move on from LAFC and that eventually they were going to trade him to somewhere else, because he's really fell out of favor at LAFC, and that he hasn't really made a lot of star and haven't really fulfilled the potential that I think LAFC originally thought he was going to be. And I guess maybe that a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you're in LAFC and you are with the big boys, the expectation, of course, is going to be much higher, and I guess that expectation kind of put too much pressure under Christian Ramirez, and that he did not perform as well as he did. And keep in mind, LAFC bought him for $1 million. That is a lot of money in terms of a club trying to get another player from another club, and that kind of pressure is definitely going to be on the player, and it's unfortunate that it didn't really work out for him at LAFC, but most likely he could be going to the Dynamos at that point. Now, at 5:01 p.m. Eastern time, the Galaxy continued their pursuit of making room for Christian Pavon, but still there was no deal reached. But they did offload one of their veteran, and one of the veteran that they're going to decide to sell is that they decided that they are going to get rid of Jurgen Sitkelvik, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Galaxy fans will be breathing a huge sigh of relief that he is gone, because from what I heard from Galaxy fans, they said that he is just one of the worst defenders that they had, and many people question why in the world is he still even on this team, and how in the world did he last that long with the Galaxy. So he, of course, moves on, and that he is actually going to be going to Hammarby. I think that's a club either in Norway or in the Danish Super League. But yep, the Galaxy have decided to sell one of their veteran. And then at 5:39 p.m. Eastern time, there was detail emerged surrounding Dynamo report acquisition of Christian Ramirez from LAFC, and that LAFC is actually going to be receiving $250,000 in combined of GAM and TAM plus escalator, and this was according to Paul Tenorio and Jeff Reuter. So there was definitely at that point some big rumor, the fact that Christian Ramirez was going to move on, and if he was going to move on for $250,000, that is so much less than when LAFC decided to buy him from Minnesota, and it just shows you how his stock rate has just completely plummeted after he just didn't fit at LAFC. Now, at around 5:46 p.m. Eastern, it was announced that Michael Osorio is on the move again, and that he is going to be going to the Chicago Fire, and that the Impact have also made it official that they are going to get the number 1 spot in the allocation order, and they're going to get Balou Tabella on loan from Barcelona B. And the reason why they had to go to the number 1 allocation order is because he used to be with the Impact until they sold him. Now they basically just bought him back, and that, it's kind of a very stupid rule with the way that it feels like every player that leave MLS, and when they decide to come back, you have to make sure that if you're going to sign those players, you got to make sure you're very high in the allocation order, even though that players that you got, you basically sold sell them, but you can of course buy him back because you might not be in terms of the allocate. Might not be high enough in terms of the allocation order, which I feel like there's got to be a rule that says that if you're a club that decide to sell one of your player to Europe and that they decide to come back to MLS, you should have the first rights in terms of getting those guys because you sold them in the first place. So that's something that I feel like they probably should have changed rather than this whole allocation order and stuff like that. But then at 6:01 p.m. Eastern Time, the Red Bulls, of course, have officially announced the acquisition of English winger Josh Sim on loan through the end of 2019 season. Didn't say anything about a option to buy, but this is definitely some good depth for the Red Bulls in terms of that midfield. And at around 6:19 p.m. Eastern Time, this was also officially announced that Balotelli has officially joined the Montreal Impact. And then at 7:01 p.m. Eastern Time, it was officially announced that Christian Ramirez is officially sold to the Houston Dynamo, and that they of course pay around the same amount that Paul Tenorio and David Reuter said, that LAFC was going to get $250,000 of that money. And I'll tell you what, somewhere in Minnesota and in Minneapolis right now, I bet they are really just dancing in the rain with the way that they were able to sell one of their favorite players for $1 million, only to find out that player that they of course sold him off literally lost around $750,000 just when they decided to sell him back to the Dynamo. I mean, I think in some way they're going to be very happy with this. Although at the same time, I kind of also feel they will be very sad because, you know, a lot of Minnesota fans are still kind of not happy with the fact that they sold Ramirez last year and that he was really a fan favorite with this team. But he's now with the Houston Dynamo, and, you know, obviously the Dynamo, with Christian Ramirez being there, you know, I'm guessing he would either partner with Mauro Manotas going up front, or is he going to be on the bench a lot? Because, you know, with that, I don't think the Dynamo really need a striker with, you know, unless if Mauro Manotas is going to eventually move on from the Dynamo, maybe that's why they decided to get Christian Ramirez, as he's going to be kind of the guy that they need in terms of when Manotas does move on from the Dynamo. But yeah, this is kind of a bit of an interesting one, and that I guess maybe the Dynamo need more attacking pieces. I still think the Dynamo, one of their biggest issue that they need to address is got to be that defense and that midfield. Like, that defense and midfield is just hot garbage right now. But they of course signed Christian Ramirez during that point, and then at 8:04 p.m. it was officially announced that LAFC have announced an acquisition of Uruguayan attacker Brian Rodriguez from Pinero, which is the same club that sold Diego Rossi and the same club that sold Nicolas Ladero to the Seattle Sounders. So yeah, that when you of course are getting a player from a club that has sold players that know to be a big superstar in MLS, you know this is going to be a very good signing. And again, I don't know if this signing is going to be something that LAFC are preparing when they know that eventually they're going to have to sell Diego Rossi, and that, you know, there was no word on the fact that they, of course, decided to sell Diego Rossi during the summer transfer window, but I would definitely not rule out in terms of the winter transfer window. And depend if LAFC does win MLS Cup, maybe I think if they do get a big offer for Rossi, I think most likely they're going to take it, and Brian Rodriguez is going to be the replacement of that. So, yeah, not a bad deal for LAFC. I mean, the rich just gets richer for this team that is just on record to be the best team ever in MLS. Then at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Sporting KC and RSL are doing some deadline night business, and according to Kansas City Star report, creative midfielder Kellen Rowe is apparently on the move once again, and that he is actually gonna go to RSL in exchange for a 2019 international roster spot and $75,000 of target allocation money. Yeah, it's unfortunate that when Kellen Rowe moved to Sporting KC, it didn't really kind of work out. I mean, I remember he used to be a very good player for the Revs, and I also remember back in the 2017 Gold Cup, I was also talking about how he could be a guy that could be on the U.S. men's national team, and that he really impressed me doing that Gold Cup. Yeah, it just shows you how much he has really fallen, and that unfortunately he just didn't really get a chance or really get any minutes at SKC. That I feel like SKC just had no choice but to just sell him off to another team, and that they can just free up a roster spot at that point. Now, at 8:45 p.m., the Dynamo looked like they were going to potentially get another player, and that after they, of course, got Christian Ramirez, they are actually looking to trying to get Nico Hansen, who is currently playing with the Columbus Crew. Although it says here, H-Town-based journalist and former Dynamo front office leader Lester Grishitz said so, reporting that the wingers only play is heading to Columbus. So yeah, they are thinking that this move, of course, could happen, and I guess this is another kind of one that kind of scratched my head a little bit, because they already have two good winger in Romel Kyoto and Albert Elise, and I'm guessing maybe the reason why they decided to get this move done or actually sign this player is because once Elise does leave the club, they need they need a different option, and that maybe Nico Hansen is going to be the guy that's going to replace him, which I don't think that's a great replacement. I mean, Nico Hansen, he hasn't really played a lot with Columbus this season, and you're going to try to use him to replace Albert Elise, who is the most important player on your team and has scored a bunch of goals for your team. Yeah, I just feel like that is a very big head scratcher move, and that is a complete mismatch if they're going to try to replace him on that. Now, at 9 o'clock p.m., Minnesota United have complete a much rumored news on Wednesday night, complete the signing of Uruguayan youth international Thomas Chacon, and I, of course, talked about that yesterday, that they were potentially going to sign him on deadline day, which they, of course, did that, and they are going to sign him on a young designated player contract, and the report cost is $4 million, which is a lot of money for an 18-year-old. But I'm guessing, since he is a Uruguayan youth international, and the fact that I'm guessing Minnesota are seeing him being the next best thing, and a guy that is ready to potentially replace Darwin Quintero once Quintero, of course, leaves this team, then that is exactly why they decided to kind of complete that offer. Now, moving on, and let's see, is there any more news? Oh, yes, one more news that happened in the transfer window that I think has pretty much is something that I've been talking about throughout the last couple of news of the day, and I have repeatedly put that on my thumbnail and kind of put that in the title, and that, of course, is the Christian Pavon kind of situation, because I've been talking about how last week I said the deal was off because the Galaxy and Boca Junior couldn't reach on an agreement, and it looks like Pavon was actually going to go to France instead of joining the Galaxy. But then this week it said that the deal was once again on, and then there was a couple of pictures showing him in Galaxy jersey. Well, it is actually now official that they have announced that they are going to try to get Pavon, and that they're not going to get him on a transfer fee, and that they're not going to send 18 or 20 million to Boca Juniors, but instead they are going to use target allocation money to loan Boca, or not loan Boca Junior, but loan Christian Pavon, and that they are going to loan him for 1 year, and that they have an option to potentially loan him for another season, or even a chance to purchase the player rights. Now, this is definitely interesting, because with all this talk about how much the Galaxy is going to pay for this guy, and that it was going to be just a record amount of fee, at the end of all that, it was really just kind of a loan deal. And I think loan deal throughout this transfer window has really been the key to most of the signings, where most of the signings has just been loan deal. And I guess now MLS team are kind of being more smart about in terms of the signing, and that I feel like when they decided to sign a player on loan, there's going to be that low risk and high reward kind of situation where if the player doesn't work out, you can obviously give him back to the team that you of course loan from, or if he does work out and that you have a option to buy, like what the Galaxy could do with Pavon if he does well with the Galaxy, then yeah, you can of course expect to buy that player or buy him in the Galaxy standpoint. So yeah, that is definitely very kind of interesting, and that after all this talk about whether or not if Pavon is going to go to the Galaxy, it looked like he is going to go to the Galaxy, and that he's going to go to it in a move that I don't think a lot of people thought was the thing that Boca Junior was going to do, which is just let him go on a loan instead of the Galaxy just kind of buying him for about $17 million. And I also heard that he is also going to be on a TAM contract, which, yeah, that is definitely a very odd kind of thing to say. The fact that Christian Pavon, one of the most promising player in the world a couple of seasons ago, is actually now on a TAM contract in MLS, and that the Galaxy didn't have to really worry about the DP kind of situation with them have to potentially get rid of one of their DP in order to get Pavon. Now, I also have heard that next year they might have to sign Pavon on a DP contract, and that they're potentially going to have to get rid of one of their DP heading into next season. So yeah, we shall see if that of course is the case. But yeah, that is pretty much it for all the things and all the timeline that has happened during deadline days. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think is the biggest move that had made during this transfer deadline day? And also let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this transfer window, and are you happy with what your team did during this transfer window? As a Quakes fan, to talk about the Quakes this transfer window, I mean, I guess I'm kind of happy the fact that we of course did decide to buy a couple of players, and that we did decide to get Carlos Fierro and Andreas Rios, two players that Mateus Almeida knows a lot about and knows how how he can use them and how he can of course make them a superior player. But at the same time, I kind of feel like we probably should have done a little bit more during this window, and that, as I was mentioning when I was talking about the first video where I reflect on Anibal Godoy going to Nashville, which really was the biggest deal and probably the most surprising deal throughout this transfer window for the Quakes. The interesting thing is that I think the reason why we decided not to sign anybody during this transfer window is because we just don't have any more international roster spot, and that the roster is pretty filled right now, and that unless if we decide to offload some of the players on our roster at the end of the season, we aren't able to actually add a couple of players that we could potentially add them as a DP and also put them in the international roster spot. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of what your team did during this transfer window? And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.